Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a new year. Out with 2025. Ew. Gross. Spit on the ground. Will 2026 be better? Probably not, but we can always hope.
Of course it will. Yeah. All of our problems are going to get solved. Those things that were just giving you nightmares every single day of 2025, those are all specifically located in 2025. And as soon as that new year switches over, they're going to, disappear like fairy dust.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the hope, at least. So the 21st century is now one quarter over, and we've got a special episode of Genre Grinder to celebrate that. And we're doing this because I was busy with other stuff this month, and that usually happens at the end of the year because a lot of the good Blu-rays come out at the end of the year for holiday stuff. And I was also sick. And then yesterday we were trapped in Owatonna, Minnesota because there was a horrible blizzard, and we almost died, but I didn't. I'm fine now. And
Gabe told me some of the stories about that blizzard. It sounded terrifying.
Yeah, check the news for accidents in the highways in southern Minnesota. Bad stuff. So I almost skipped December entirely for an episode, especially since things were getting a little off schedule. But when I started reading everyone on Blue Sky, the non-Twitter social media site for anybody who doesn't know what Blue Sky is, they're sharing their favorite movies of the 21st century, and I realized I could outsource my work. So I went to past co-hosts and asked them to tell me their favorite movies released between 2000 and 2025. But I wanted them to say the films that they felt were the most underrated, because if we say favorite movies, you end up with like 7 No Country for Old Men's. I'm trying to think of a single other movie that everybody likes from that era. Get Out. Everybody likes Get Out. You might end up.
There you go.
Yeah. So I thought it would be. Oh, good. Someone's hammering. Oh, good. This is great. This is going so well so far. But this is so we're calling this a bonus episode. This isn't like an official Genre Grinder episode, and it's in part because people are hammering outside for some reason. But anyway, I thought it'd be more in the spirit of Genre Grinder to go with something underrated and to help listeners boost their watched lists for next year, and also because we don't cover a lot of modern movies on this podcast. So Patrick and I both prepared our own lists of 5 films, and I'm going to interject with recordings of other friends' lists. Some people just sent me a recording. Tyler Foster didn't pay attention to what I had said, and he picked 10 movies, and I didn't have the heart to tell him to cut it to 5 because he was already talking. So I'm going to have a kind of a long one with Tyler kind of in the middle, a whole like almost 30 minutes. But otherwise, they're going to be kind of short, and Patrick and I are going to do our best to talk briefly, but we are ourselves, and we are chatty Cathys, so it might end up long. But that's another reason why it's a bonus episode, because is it going to be an hour long? Is it going to be 7 hours long? We don't know. Who knows? Nobody knows. I'm not editing this yet. I'm recording it right now, so I can't tell you anything. Except for I do know what other people...
open wide.
What did you say?
I said the future is open wide.
Yes. That's...
Just derailing the podcast with a soft sell reference.
Soft sell.
We're off to a good start.
Soft sell. I was trying to think of what the band
soft
was.
Sell. Wait. No. Modern English. I got it wrong. Modern English. Soft sell is Tainted Love.
Modern English.
And Say Hello, Wave Goodbye. That's a good soft sell song. Sex Dwarf. I'll keep listing all the soft sell hits.
They have that cover of Where Did Our Love Go?
Yeah, it goes right at the end. It's a real We Are the Champions, We Will Rock You situation.
Yeah. All right. So my list is in release order, not ranked order. And I challenged myself by not talking about any movies we already covered at some point on the Genre Grinder podcast. I did not give that rule to anybody else, just myself. And that made it challenging because I forgot that years ago in 2020, I had people tell me their favorite horror movies of the 2010s. Is there anything we need to know about your list, Patrick, before we get into it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I am sort of unqualified to make a list like this, in that I am kind of checked out of film culture in many major ways. I'm not on social media. I don't, other than you when we podcast together, or just like we're chatting online, like I really don't talk to a lot of people about movies.
He doesn't even own a TV.
I've come to understand that like my coworkers don't need to hear like the really super granular opinions of film and stuff like that. Like it's just irritating to them. So I really don't talk to anybody about movies. I don't know what people think. And also, this is the kind of list where it's like I'm literally picking from thousands of movies, including some that I haven't seen in like 18 years.
Yeah.
So this is a list that I'm like, all of these movies I feel extremely strong about, and I have never met another person who feels as extremely strong about it as I do. And that is that was my qualification for most underrated.
And that's kind of what I went with too. Because I am on social media, but I don't really follow what has changed very well. So I don't know, some of the ones I might have picked might now be popular and just weren't when I was thinking about them, but whatever. All right, I'm going to let you go first so that we end on my pick because it's my podcast.
Sure. State and Maine from the year 2000 by David Mamet is simply one of the funniest movies ever made, like top 10 funniest movies ever made, funniest screenplays ever written. It is just nonstop, absolutely hilarious dialogue. It is an absolutely stacked cast. It beat the odds by being a really funny movie that nonetheless played on Comedy Central a lot in the mid-aughts, which is like Comedy Central had a thing in the mid-aughts where they played a lot of movies and almost all of them were deeply unfunny but had a bunch of celebrities in them. That was like the Comedy Central thing, was like, is this a movie that played at Sundance, has 5 famous people in it, and is sort of notionally a comedy? And then, so that's how you get like The Road to Wellville, the Matthew Broderick, what was the guy, Dr. Kellogg?
Yeah, the Kellogg's guy, yep.
Yeah, John Harvey Kellogg. There's a movie about John Harvey Kellogg where he's played by Anthony Hopkins and Matthew Broderick is in it. And you need a fucking atlas to find a joke in it. Like, it's kind of like notionally amusing, but it's not a fucking comedy. That is what played on Comedy Central all the time. Somehow, State and Maine also played on Comedy Central all the time. Absolutely hysterically funny. It is about a Hollywood production descending on this like small New England town. And it is David Mamet just being excoriating and tearing down the film industry. And it's very well-worn territory, the idea that no one in the film industry gives a fuck about art and that all well-meaning artists eventually just become fucking whores through the machine that is Hollywood. None of that is going to be new to you, but it is just done so forcefully and so fucking funny that I'm dying laughing the entire movie. Philip Seymour Hoffman plays the screenwriter. It might be the best William H. Macy role ever. Like, William H. Macy is the director, and he is just the most like he is just like the grumpiest man in the world. And the way he just kind of will switch to being phony to a specific person for a specific line reading and then immediately go back to being just like a real piece of shit to someone else. Like, yeah, it's just like you've seen this kind of movie before, but you've never seen it this good. And I have never heard anyone else ever talk about it. This has never been on a like list of best comedies. This has never been on like when people talk about the films of David Mamet, they're always talking about his thrillers or his like con man movies. This is just kind of forgotten, and it is just one of the funniest films ever made. So that is my number. That's my first one I'm going with.
Somehow it has Philip Seymour Hoffman, William H. Macy, and Ricky Jay, and is not a Paul Thomas Anderson movie.
And David Paymer. David Paymer's amazing in it. Sarah Jessica Parker's very funny. Alec Baldwin. If you are like, you know how there are certain actors who you kind of, over the years, you learn that they're a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And then some of their roles work better because they've been cast as a piece of shit. And then some of their roles work worse because they're cast as like likable people. This is Alec Baldwin as just a piece of shit movie star in a way that it feels like maybe David Mamet hated Alec Baldwin and wrote the part just for him.
Perfect. All right. So my first one is The Land of the Dead, 2005, directed by George Romero. I swore we talked about this on the podcast, and I looked through everything, and I think I talked about it on Directors Club. There was a George Romero episode on that, and I just remembering recording, and that was probably before I even had a podcast. But anyway, I've always thought this was underrated, and there's been surprisingly little retrospective reevaluation over the last 20 years. I was convinced that it would be at least as beloved as Day of the Dead by now, back when it came out. But I really don't think it's anywhere near that. I saw just the other day after I picked this, I saw someone posting about it on Blue Sky. So maybe it's picked up a little bit, but I think the only reason it has a special edition 4K or Blu-ray, I can't even remember which it is because it's a George Romero movie and you kind of have to shovel those all together. But the plot is a continuation of the first 3 movies in the series, if you didn't know, in so much that there is any continuity in these movies. They're decades apart, but they sort of have a continuity. And then the zombie apocalypse has been somewhat normalized, and a new society has risen within that, actually multiple societies. And this film basically sets up a sort of metropolis situation where the bottom rung of society, the zombies, just wander these dead wastes of the old world. And when the lower class humans are in these sort of slums guarded behind kind of weak walls, and the remains of the rich humans live in a luxury tower called Fiddler's Green that has all the stuff they want, even though all that stuff is now worthless. Who cares about perfume and jewelry? But the rich people have a giant truck called the Dead Reckoning, which was almost the title of the film, and they use the poorer humans to send out, and they go out in Dead Reckoning, and they have to collect supplies for the rich people. Yes. We were going to go on a road trip, and the Dead Reckoning truck is apparently, I can't remember where it was. It's somewhere in Canada now, and we could have gone and seen it. But they have this thing on their website saying, please no looky loose. So we decided against it. So if anything, I think this movie ends up fitting the Trump era even better than it fit the Bush era. It was definitely written and rewritten. It was rewritten from his original Clinton era script, which was more about the zombies being basically the homeless population, where they were sort of rotting away and not functioning very well anymore. And so people were ignoring them. He put it on ice after 9/11 and rewrote it for the Bush era. But for me, the Bush era was about being constantly afraid and giving up freedoms for supposed safety. And there were wealthy people filling their pockets. We all know about Enron and BlackRock and all that stuff. But they were living comfortably and safely apart from the rest of us. But Fiddler's Green itself is so Trump era coded to me. Without even meaning to, I had seriously doubt Romero had anything Trump in mind when he did it. Dennis Hopper plays the human villain, and he was trying to be, what was the Secretary of State?
Donald Rumsfeld?
Yeah, he was specifically trying to be Rumsfeld. There are definitely weaknesses in this movie. The casting is one of them. Everybody is very low energy. There might be a few too many characters. I'm not sure why we even need Simon Baker's group in here, because John Leguizamo is much better in this, and as a lead, he would have been more interesting if we were just covering him. And what we have here is a case where his group has stolen Dead Reckoning, and Simon Baker's group has to go out and get it back. And they both are going to try to get something out of this from the rich people. But I don't think you need that extra step. I think it can just be about Leguizamo's people, because the previous Dead movies had plenty of protagonists who were out for themselves and struggling to be a part of a system that was gone. It's like an ongoing theme throughout these movies. The heroes are often not great people. They're just better than the other people. And I think I've mentioned it before, but I once tried to write a book about 9/11, post 9/11 horror movies. And I started back in 2008 when Bush was out, and I was really excited about it, and I kind of lost interest. And then I revised it after Trump won in 2016, and I rewatched all these movies, and I found that most of them had aged kind of badly, and I didn't really like them anymore. But, in a way that they were still part of their era, so maybe that's better. But Land of the Dead was one that I genuinely thought got better in spite of all its problems, in spite of the fact that Romero isn't very visually comfortable with that kind of generic 2000s visual look. I just think it's so thematically, emotionally satisfying. And the one main thing about it that I think is a great metaphor is that they have fireworks, which they call sky flowers. And I think this is worth the entire experience, is the idea that zombies lose focus when they see fireworks. And it's a very obvious metaphor. Fireworks are traditional American nationalist visual. They're a nationalist visual for most cultures these days. But there's a scene at the end when the zombies finally stop watching the fireworks and they refocus and they go back to literally eating the rich. Honestly, seeing that in the theaters, and this is going to be a theme that comes up a couple times here, I almost cried in the theater because I thought it was such a great image. and I don't care if it's heavy-handed. I loved the idea, and we were, what was it? We were in the middle of the worst parts of the Bush administration at the time, and so there was just part of me was like, yeah, go get him. It just made me feel good, and which is not something.
Yeah.
You get that out of Bub the Zombie, I guess. Bub the Zombie going on his shooting rampage and not actually eating anybody. You get a little of that out of Day of the Dead too. But Dawn of the Dead,
and it should. I was just gonna say it should definitely be noted that like at the time, pop culture was still super jingoistic.
Yeah.
It was still super into the Bush regime. It was still really into selling the tragedy of 9/11 as this sort of like rallying moment for like America's expansion into the Middle East and stuff like that. You were getting people who were pushing back against that, like their careers were ending. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until around like 2007, maybe late 2006 that you really start to see that turn culturally as the Iraq War just sort of drug on and on. But this was a very bold movie to come out when it did.
And I think it's a nice contrast to the Day of the Dead remake that Zack Snyder and James Gunn made, which is actually a movie I like, but it's a completely different. It's what you expect from a 9/11 era zombie movie.
Yo, Gabe. Hello, everybody. This is Jim Laczkowski with the Directors Club podcast and the B-Side Me podcast over at jimlaczkowski.net. I've been on several episodes, probably on a yearly basis, which I always look forward to here, and chiming in with some picks for underrated, overlooked movies of the 21st century. Tried not to overthink this too much with 5 titles that immediately came to mind, but the first one on the top of my list wasn't appreciated as much as when it came out, and I think people are now finally responding to it favorably, and that it's Martin Scorsese's masterpiece, Shutter Island, which is a film that says a lot about mental health, including how it was treated back then, but more interestingly, the idea of needing to escape trauma or like recontextualize it in order to not deal with reality in a sense. And watching it 3 times, I almost think of it now as a movie that showcases reasons why people need to escape the truth because it's too scary to deal with. So we create our own version of the truth. And in a way, isn't that what art and movies kind of do, either for the filmmaker or the audience? Like, we are escaping and we are allowing ourselves to be immersed into another world because reality kind of sucks. So why not take a trip to this island in a way? But the final line of this movie is really haunting and disturbing and always hits me very hard with each viewing. So I know a lot of people talk about, well, what is underrated Scorsese movies? But to me, don't dismiss Shutter Island as being just another horror film. It's much more than that. Also on my list is similar in theme, Take Shelter by Jeff Nichols, which might contain my favorite performance of the 21st century with Michael Shannon as a man who's trying to come to terms with the fact that he is potentially developing some kind of mental health disorder, and he decides the best way to manage both that fear as well as his night terrors is by building a storm shelter in the backyard. Again, another movie with a very haunting final scene that I know some people initially kind of shrugged off, or I don't know, they had weird responses to it, but I think it's very powerful and kind of brings tears to my eyes, as does a particular sequence and moment in the actual storm shelter where his wife is trying to convince him that everything's going to be all right. And anytime I watch that, I always think this is why I love movies. It just mirrors my own experiences and, again, recontextualizes it in a way that makes me feel less alone in dealing with any kind of anxiety or depression or just emotional issue, whatever it may be. And I'm sensing a little bit of a theme because another film that kind of, well, it definitely touches on mental health, but more from a caretaker perspective, is the very special Short Term 12, with one of the best screenplays of the past 15 years, with a wonderful central performance by Brie Larson before she went into the Marvel universe. And when you go back to this one, you're going to see a lot of young actors who have gone on to become bigger and star in a lot of things because they made such a strong first impression here with this story about, I believe they're social workers, and they're just kind of trying to adapt to like a very challenging working environment by helping teenagers deal with crisis and trauma and things from their past so they can have a more hopeful and stable future. If you want, it's for all you horror fans out there, if you want to think of this as the indie drama version of Dream Warriors, you can. But it's got a lot of empathy and compassion. And that's something that, again, I just really gravitate towards when I see movies that are about people trying to help and also learning about the people needing help. So this is another very moving film that means a lot to me personally. And now let's have some laughs with something different, which I think might be my favorite Noah Baumbach film of the 21st century, with Mistress America, only due to the fact that I just love these characters so much. And the more they interact, the more it reaches screwball comedy levels with this just pitch perfect Greta Gerwig performance. And Lola Kirk is also great. They're two women kind of coming from different backgrounds, realizing that they might become step siblings, if I'm not mistaken. But they really struggle with finding their place in the world and maintaining friendships due to social awkwardness or a lack of a filter or a lack of boundaries. And on top of that, it's just really line for line brilliant at times, and the kind of fast quip dialogue that I just love in comedies in general. And that, again, like once they reach the house of an old boyfriend, a Greta Gerwig's old boyfriend, I'm telling you, it just becomes nonstop hilarious. And at that point in my mind, as I'm watching it, anytime I go back to it, I go, well, this is a comedy classic to me. It really is. And as much as I love Frances Ha, this one just makes me laugh even more, and has the multi-talented Lola Kirk, who has gone on to become like a singer-songwriter and an author and so much more. And she's really charming in this. But this is, probably my pick for one of the best comedies of the 21st century. And finally, let's end with a sci-fi horror film, because this is Genre Grinder. And this knocked me out to where I'm still anticipating a follow-up from this filmmaker. And he did a little film called Coherence. And this is a simple premise. It's a dinner party, takes place on the night when a comet passes by. And somehow, I guess it's either the space-time continuum or something causes like this ripple effect that leads to like parallel universes overlapping. So again, it's a multiverse movie of sorts, but it's nothing like, the one that won all the awards, Everything Everywhere All at Once. This is like, again, the indie version or the primer version of that concept. And anytime someone leaves the house or makes a different choice, it causes a chain reaction, I guess you might say. Much of this was improvised. The actors kind of learned as they went and sort of adapted to everything taking place, and everything's unexpected. It's just a really interesting kind of approach to a Twilight Zone premise. And it was done independently, small budget. This could have easily been like a play, or you can even turn this into a role-playing D&D game, if you will. It's just so interesting. And I love going back to this one so much. It is definitely right up there as being one of the most underrated films of the 21st century. So I hope you all track that down, along with Mistress America, Short Term 12, Take Shelter, and one of Scorsese's best films, Shutter Island. Thanks, Gabe, for having me on to contribute, and looking forward to talking with you in 2026. So, yes, happy holidays, Merry New Year to you and everyone listening to your awesome podcast here. Cheers.
On 10,000 leagues beneath the sea, 10,000 leagues.
Yeah, my second one is What Time Is It There from 2001, directed by Chai-Ming Liang. Chai-Ming Liang is one of my favorite directors. I did an episode of Directors Club on Chai-Ming Liang, and that's like, if I had to name like 5 things I've done that I'm proud of, that would definitely be one of them. Me and Bill Ackerman, former Genre Grinder guest, did an episode on Chai-Ming Liang where we went through his whole filmography. Really interesting filmmaker. Comes in kind of at the tail end of what is thought of as the Taiwanese New Wave, a film movement that had directors like Hao Shen and Edward Yang. And his movies were really idiosyncratic. They, especially as his career goes on, they sort of fall under slow cinema. He is a gay man, and they have a very queer sensibility. There's a very weird sense of humor to Chai-Ming Liang movies, and he's really interested in urban spaces, liminal spaces. Almost all of his movies take place in contemporary Taipei. So when you're watching these movies, you are just sort of seeing the city evolve around them. And it's all about these characters who are sort of alienated from these sort of urban environments, but it also has this very campy sense of humor and queer sensibility. And then there's always some elements that it's very puzzling. And then it's like kind of a lot of fun to try to unpack. He doesn't make very traditional films in a lot of ways. What Time Is It There does not have an anamorphic DVD release. It has been released on DVD once in 2001, and it is a letterboxed release. And that is, to me, like, how underrated is this? No one has fucking seen this anamorphically other than the few times it screens at, a few repertory cinemas in the world every once in a while. No one's talking about this. Chai-Ming Liang does have a film on the Sight and Sound 250 Greatest Films of All Time list, Goodbye Dragon Inn. That's definitely his most popular. This is the one that came right before that, and it shares some of those hallmarks. There are scenes that take place in the movie theater from Goodbye Dragon Inn, but it's also got more of a story. It's this sort of sprawling story about this father who dies, and his son is convinced that his ghost is hanging outside in the living room, so he can't like leave his room to go pee in the middle of the night, so he just starts peeing in bags. And at the same time, he sells a watch to this young girl he's like a guy who's like 19, 20, and she is like 19 or 20 as well. So he sells his watch to this young woman it has multiple time zones on it, and she is heading to France. And so you follow her story in France, being very alienated from the rest of the city in Paris. You follow his story as he becomes obsessed with Paris. He starts watching French films. He starts running around Taipei, changing the times on all public clocks to Paris time. You get the mother who thinks that the soul of her dead husband, who has been reincarnated into their fish in the tank, so she's like keeps feeding the fish and talking to the fish. And it's just this like really powerful moving film about loneliness. There's, I don't think, a single shot where the camera moves in the film. It is really, really, really beautiful. And part of that is because you get all these really long takes where the camera is just locked down. And so when they were making this movie, they were able to really take their time and light each shot very specifically. And so it is just absolutely gorgeous, and it's really funny, and it's really sad, and it's really weird. It has just this like really discursive energy to it. It's got kind of like a weird horniness to it, but not in any way that's like legible as like sexy cinema. I think Chai-Ming Liang generally is like a sex negative kind of a director. He's really interested in sex, but mostly he's interested in the way that sex is a disappointment and is insufficient to what people try to use it for. So that's like kind of a recurring theme of his movies, and that's definitely part of What Time Is There. So it's just like so one of a kind, even among his filmography. The way he makes movies with the same actors and the same locations and the same themes and ideas and even images, and he'll sort of loop around them. What Time Is It There kind of stands out from the rest of them, in part because it just feels like a synthesis of every other film up to that point. So like this is the movie he made before Goodbye Dragon Inn. Goodbye Dragon Inn, more of a slow cinema thing, and then everything post Goodbye Dragon Inn is really getting more experimental, more avant-garde, less mainstream. more outside of what even an art house audience would really show up for. He gets very alienating by the time you're getting to like Stray Dogs and Facade and stuff like that. But What Time Is It There? Absolutely incredible, and I'd love to recommend it to you, but the only way you're ever going to see it is on a really shitty looking DVD that's not even anamorphic.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any of his. I haven't even seen Rebels of the Neon God. It's just one of those filmmakers I have on the list that I've never gotten to.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't think you'd like them.
Okay, fair enough. Well,
I think you should check out Goodbye Dragon Inn because it's like 75 minutes.
Yeah.
And it is just a unique object. And then I think at the end of it, you're going to go, yeah, I found that really boring. But you can have experienced a Chiming Liang movie.
there we go. Okay. All right. I'll move that one up the list then. The imaginary list. Okay. So then my next one is, I feel like this is one of two movies on here that's going to disappoint the few fans of the podcast we have here who want us to talk about weird cult movies. But outside of the podcast and reviewing, I watch weird cult movies all the time. So in my spare time, I don't watch a lot of weird cult movies. But I picked Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Running Down a Dream. This was a 2007 very long-form documentary by Peter Bogdanovich, of all people. I love Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. It might be the boringest thing about me. It's genuinely my favorite band, and it has been since I was a child. I learned to play guitar. I had one of those books on how to play all the songs in Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers' greatest hits. My dad and I would bond over cassette tapes in the car during road trips. I'll watch any documentary about the guy you got. They made a really good made-for-TV doc in 1994 called Tom Petty Going Home. And there's a 2010 episode of Classic Albums for Dan the Torpedoes. Best episode of a great series right there. That's true. Christine's right. I tune my guitar to American Girl because it's in D. And it's easy to find the D. I just made a double entendre. Anyway, so I didn't need another doc, but then Peter Bogdanovich, who's a filmmaker I respect, but I'm not a hugest Bogdanovich fan, I'll admit. He decided to go make this epic career retrospective that unfortunately ended up being sort of the Tom Petty doc to end all Tom Petty docs, not only because the band only had two more pretty mediocre albums after that, but because Petty died very suddenly, kind of out of the blue. He wasn't that old. There's not much else to say about the guy or his band. And I say that, but there's actually another documentary that's free on YouTube right now about the recording of Wildflowers, which I think is my favorite rock album of all time. Anyway, the only thing this doc doesn't cover is She's the One soundtrack album that he made. My guess is that there was some sort of licensing issue there because it was a movie. I don't think it's because Petty disliked that album. I think that it's a mediocre record overall, but that Walls is maybe the last great song he and the Heartbreakers recorded. But I think the thing that keeps people away from this movie is probably disinterest in Tom Petty and 70s rock music, and I can't blame anybody for that. Like I said, it's the boringest thing about me. But if you avoided it because it's 4 hours and 19 minutes long, don't let that get in your way, because it's structured in a way that makes it very easy to put down and pick back up again. It can be like two movies. It can be one long movie. You can even treat it as 4 episodes of a miniseries. It works just fine. I'll end this as speaking at crying at movies. This movie, the first time I saw it, it put me in an existential spiral. The through theme here is that Petty, who I can admit, even as a massive fan, isn't the most astronomically talented musician in the world. You know, he's something about him hits for me and hits for other people. I think he's a good distillation of what rock music was at the time. But, you know, he's taking from other artists, and there are people who are more talented than him. But anyway, he just never gave up on himself. He wanted to be a songwriter, and he just kept on writing songs. He kept playing songs. He didn't take any bad deals. He didn't really worry about falling back on a different job because he could always just go back to Northern Florida and be a local celebrity he knew. And it made me wish that I had more faith in myself as a musician when I was in my 20s. And it genuinely put me in a spiral the first time I watched this. And I was kind of inconsolable. Fortunately, I was by myself. I wasn't. So I doubt anybody else will experience it that way, but hopefully it illustrates what this movie meant to me.
Awesome. And I have a question, having not seen it. Is it just the sort of dedication to detail that comes out in the length that makes it different from, because this is, I think, maybe the beginning of the era where every single band got one of these documentaries. There's like a Rush documentary like this.
Yeah.
There's, like every single band has a documentary that is sort of a commercial for the band that is like, here's why this band's the most important band in rock music. And they all kind of feel the exact same. This one, other than obviously your love of Tom Petty, this one, I would guess it's just more detailed because it is 4 fucking hours long.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I didn't time it, but I think that like almost 30 minutes of it, he's not even in the Heartbreakers. Maybe 20 minutes of it. It's him by himself, and then Mudcrutch was his first band. And yeah, it's a lot of detail. I can't remember what the name of that other documentary is, so I would recommend it. But it's on YouTube. It's Rick Rubin. It's all black and white.
They don't make these movies anymore because all these movies went to YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. This was basically straight to DVD when it came out, but it's streaming all over the place now.
When I was a young boy, I was working for the state. I wasn't making much money. I was staying out late.
Hi everyone, Luana here from Defend Your Trash Movie. Gabe asked me to record my top 5 favorite, most underrated movies of the century, so here goes, in no particular order, even though I did number them, so what do I know? At number 5, The Night Comes For Us by Timo Tchajanto, starring Iko Uwais, Joe Taslim, and Julia Estelle. Absolute action classic, maybe not underrated by anyone who's seen it, but just an insane gauntlet of extremely R-rated, high-octane action with several juicy parts for women. Criminal that we haven't had a Julie Estelle-led Operator sequel already. I think we're already 4 years after the release of the movie, something like that. The Night Comes For Us. Check it out on Netflix as long as you can. And number 4, Birds of Prey, or The Fantabulous Emancipation of Harley Quinn. I kind of got vindicated with the subsequent Harley Quinn HBO show, the James Gunn Suicide Squad, and arguably the entire James Gunn DC-verse, but this was the dark horse of the Snyderverse at one point. It made as much money as Ford versus Ferrari on a similar budget, but was deemed a failure where Ford was a secret success. Shout out to Ewan McGregor and that guy from The Mindy Show who played Mr. Zaz, whose villains amounted to just being guys, and it worked beautifully. A R-rated, lady-fronted, not overtly queer, but the subsequent DC entries would make that more explicit. But yeah, kind of fun yet gory and raunchy and R-rated is something that would really set the tone for what James Gunn is doing right now. And feels like it might be something that we forgot. Like it all started, I think the vibe got started with Birds of Prey back in 2021. And Christina Hodson, the screenwriter, is one of sort of the Gunn's brain trust on the current DC verse, so that's great. At number 3, we have 2006's Agora, directed by Alejandro Amenabar, starring Rachel Weisz and Oscar Isaac. This is a not quite biopic of the philosopher and astronomer and mathematician Agora, the titular Agora. She was a controversial figure in the 4th century Alexandria in the Eastern Roman Empire. The movie kind of plays with our expectations by having this, very Roman-looking and feeling movie. It's not quite the Roman Empire as we see it with, Julius Caesar in classic Hollywood movies. It's a couple centuries down the line from that. And the big change, of course, is that Christianity is the state religion at this point, and the movie has Christian bad guys. And it, as a pop culture consumer, it feels weird to have this Roman, togas and sandals and pillars type of movie where the bad guys are overtly Christian rather than the persecuted minority. This type of Christian villain is usually reserved for, medieval Inquisition type movies. And by placing it kind of in that lesser known by most people historical era, Amenabar kind of plays with our expectations and kind of it defies easy categorization of good guys and bad guys because, like, yeah, Oscar Isaac's slave character is very into Christianity because, like, they're like, hey, man, we could raise you up out of slavery. But, you know, those same Christians are like, yeah, man, you shouldn't be taking orders from a woman, man. So it's not like in, you know, those classic Ben-Hur type movies where, like, there's villainous Romans and nice persecuted Christians. Like, the slaveholders are definitely bad, but these Christians also have terrible ideas. And yeah, I thought it was a great movie, not often spoken of, but to my opinion, should be shown in schools to cultivate a healthy distrust, if not outright hatred, of organized religion. On to number two, we got 2004's Hidalgo, starring Viggo Mortensen. The type of adventure movie they don't really make much of anymore. If you like The Mummy 99, I'm pretty sure you'll like Hidalgo. Be warned, it does kind of treat Muslims about on a par with Green Martians from John Carter. Like, they're always ready to pop off with honor duels to the death with our boy Viggo, a chill cowboy, always reacting with like, now hold on there, partner. They're also hilariously, virulently racist to the horse Hidalgo, a lowly Mustang. But our boy Hidalgo, he a real fun party guy, just constantly giving horse double take reacts and going wee like human laughter. Hell yeah, Hidalgo. Type of movie they don't make much of anymore. Absolutely recommend. And at number one, 2013's We Are the Best, a Swedish movie, Vi är bäst. A true warm blanket of a film, despite its chilly setting. Three Swedish teens form a punk band in the early 80s, despite two of them not knowing how to play any instruments, usually not a problem for starting a punk band in any case. There are little setbacks and challenges throughout the movie, but there's no real unified goal beyond getting some songs written and playing them. Yeah, there's a performance at the end, but it's not like the plot builds towards it with any momentum or narrative crescendo or anything. This is absolutely fine because what this movie does is evoke perfectly the high drama of being 13 years old and having problems that literally mean nothing even though you temporarily think they are total world enders. I don't think there's anything that doesn't get resolved at best 2 scenes after the conflict is introduced. No one is harboring any dark secrets or abusive backgrounds. The parents have their foibles, but are generally, along with most adults in the movie, quite sensible. The girls can get petty and bitchy, but their rapport always comes through. There's Clara, the punkiest of the three, Bobo, who is the nominal lead. Clara is kind of the baddest ass girl, the most performatively punky one, pushing the mousier ones around, only to have it revealed she's actually all empty bluster. But, you know, her two good mousy friends bully her back, and she comes to her senses. The third friend, Hedwig, was my favorite. She's so she's such a pushover. She's like a real Rod and Todd Flanders. But over the course of the movie, she comes out of her shell to the point that she kind of low-key turns into the alpha of the group. I'm sure the ponies already copyrighted it, but you might as well have called this Friendship is Magic. So there you have it. Those were my top 5 most underrated movies of the century. My name is Luana. Check me out at Defend Your Trash Movie, wherever you get your podcasts. You want to read some cool, queer sword and sorcery? Got you covered. Go to luanawrites.card.co. I'm sure Gabe will hook me up in the show notes. And hey, happy holidays and have a banging new year, y'all.
Hello, everyone. This is Chloe Waryan of Chloe's Not Scared. I was on the April episode of Genre Grinder where Gabe and I spoke about horror anthologies. I'm also the host of the new podcast, Not Scared, a horror movie podcast, which is also on the Now Playing Network. And Gabe was on episode 10 of my podcast, and we discussed the film Zombie 2. So Gabe asked me to talk about 3 underrated films of the 21st century. I did a lot of overthinking on this prompt because, one, I don't have very obscure taste. It's also hard to think about what it means to be underrated. Not a lot of reviews on Letterboxd, maybe talked about then, but now forgotten. Perhaps a film rarely seen in America, but not in other countries. So I'm kind of incorporating all of this into one. My first film that I'm going to talk about is huge in India, but to my knowledge, not really in the States anymore. It is 2001's Lagan, or Once Upon a Time in India. It is a period drama starring Amir Khan. It was set in 1893 in a small poor village riddled by taxes and drought when the British offer to pay their debts. If the villagers can win a cricket match, the village agrees. This movie has everything I'd love. It has a love triangle, it has small town gossip, it has an unforgettable sports ending, and some beautiful music by A.R. Rahman. Apparently, it was also a very grueling film to make, and a lot went wrong during the production, but they persevered. They gained an Oscar nomination, but they did not win, which, if I recall, was kind of a big upset. This movie is 3 hours and 44 minutes long, and full disclosure, I have not seen it in years, but it is a truly unforgettable experience. I saw it once as a kid, once as a teen, and I think once in college, so I haven't seen this movie in about 15 years. I'm sorry if it doesn't hold up. I'm pretty sure it still does. If you find it, you will fall in love with it. It's my favorite sports film for sure. And Lagan only has about 4,000 reviews on Letterboxd, so I'm counting it as underrated, if only in my Americanized bubble. My second film that I'm going to talk about is El Orfanato, or The Orphanage, from 2007. It's pretty well known amongst horror fans because it was produced by Guillermo del Toro at kind of his Pan's Labyrinth height, and it was J.A. Bayonna's first film. In this Spanish-language haunted house movie, a woman named Laura buys the orphanage that she grew up in, now dilapidated and crumbling. Her husband, and her son, Simon, move in, and Simon starts talking about his new friend, Tomas, who has a bag over his head. That's creepy. Then Simon goes missing, and this whole movie is both incredibly terrifying and incredibly sad. It has an ending that will rip your heart out and spit on it. Also, this is the movie where there's that creepy hide-and-seek kind of red light, green light inspired game where you say, uno, dos, tres, kotak la pared. And it's rife with jump scares. Zach Krager was cited as saying that this movie is one of his inspirations of his movie Weapons. So if you liked Weapons, check out El Orfanato or The Orphanage. It has 15,000 reviews on Letterboxd, so I am counting it as underrated. So I've watched a lot of horror movies in the past 5 to 10 years, and I've seen a lot of dark detective-inspired horror. Usually this horror is connected to some sort of intellectual property or IP, and when it's not connected to IP, it's usually lauded as like elevated horror, which, for the record, is a dumb phrase, but I will be using it because you do know what I mean when I say it. One of my favorite horror movies to come out of this decade is The Empty Man. It was originally filmed in 2017, it was released in 2020, and it was a box office failure due to the 20th Century Fox and Disney merger not knowing how to market it at all. And there was also a global pandemic. I don't know if you remember that. The film also gained a cult following online, so this is one you've probably heard of, but maybe you haven't taken a chance on it because it sounds like The Bye-Bye Man or Slender Man. It's not like either of those movies. Please, please watch it. It is amazing. It is a movie directed by David Pryor, produced by David Fincher, starring James Badge Dale and Marin Ireland. It follows a former police officer trying to get to the bottom of a mysterious ritualistic killing in his town. This movie is connected to existing IP, but like a comic book that I think only I have read. And it is elevated horror, but it's elevated horror that isn't focused on grief or loss for the most part, which is actually very rare. Horror movies are too sad nowadays. It is inspired by creepypasta and no-sleep subreddits, but it shares more DNA with the urban legend films of the 90s. If you're on a bridge and blow into a bottle, think about the empty man. On the first night you hear him, on the second night you can't stop thinking about him, and on the third night he finds you. But it's less about a monster coming to get you and more about how the way information is disseminated in this small insular town. And as someone with a master's in information science, I find this movie fascinating. So if you haven't checked out The Empty Man from 2020, please give it a watch. Thanks again. You can find me at Chloe's Not Scared on everything, and please listen to Not Scared, a horror movie podcast on the Now Playing Network. Bye.
So my next one I'm going to talk about is PTU from 2003 by Johnny To. This is the one I'm probably going to speak about the least, if only because it has been maybe 10 years, maybe 9 years since I've seen this movie. This is a movie I only saw the one time, but it is my favorite Johnny To movie, and Johnny To is one of the greatest filmmakers ever. It is a sort of a neo-noir crime thriller about dirty cops. There is an issue where one of the dirty cops, I think this is the character played by Lam Suet, has lost his gun, and he's trying to sort of retrieve it because this gun is tied to some other horrible thing that if it gets in the wrong hands, it's going to be the end of his career, the end of his life, that sort of thing. So he's sort of like panicked going through the Hong Kong night trying to find this gun. It is super stylish. It is not the Johnny To of a Running on Karma or Throwback or Throwdown or something like that, where it's like really silly or aggressively like quirky in its comedy. It's pretty, serious, but it does have these explosions of style and these like really fascinating choices. And the sort of divining visual for me is that the street lights in this movie, and I don't know if they replaced the bulbs in the street lights or if they just shot it with a certain kind of exposure or film stock or what, but like all the street lights in Hong Kong in this movie are like stage spotlights. And so you have these dirty cops like going through the night and they're having these, soliloquies and these dialogues with each other about like the nature of being a police officer and the nature of the world of crime and the fine line between the criminals and the police and stuff like that. And it takes on this like really grand Shakespearean kind of feel because you have these characters delivering this very theatrical dialogue in spaces that were shot on location on real streets, but look like they are on a stage on, Broadway or something like that. Really, really cool choice that like totally changes the tone of the movie. There's also some like cool shootouts and shit. Like there's some really stylish action as well, but mostly it is just sort of like really sweaty, desperate, terrible men, in this really nasty world, all this like very twisty turny plot that I could not recap to because again, I have not seen it in 9 years. But I remember just being like, okay, I like a good crime film and this is like a great crime film. But then that extra stylish touch sort of elevates it to this other thing where, and I think this is like a Johnny To move that he likes to do is he'll push a stylistic choice so far that he sort of breaks the literal reality of the movie and makes you sort of contemplate the characters and the situations in a grander way. But the balance this one walks between just like, if you like a Michael Mann movie, you'll like PTU, but then also it being this sort of, epic operatic kind of a thing is really impressive. And it was one of those things where I saw it and I'm like, okay, that is a 10 out of 10 perfect movie. And also I've never heard anyone talk about it. And I still have never heard. I mean, it's a movie by Johnny To. I know it's well respected. There's a Eureka Blu-ray, so at least someone has released like a nice version of it. It's not like completely neglected, but I think there are other Hong Kong movies that this is much better than, that get talked about a lot more than this, including some by Johnny To.
I mean, I'll say as someone who thinks Johnny To peaked with the Heroic Trio and who didn't really enjoy his later, like I remember, I haven't seen a lot of these in a long time, but I didn't really like Full Time Killer or the election movies all that much. I will say as that person, this is my favorite of those crime movies he made too. So I think it appeals to people who are even a little bit tired of the Johnny To crime it's almost its own genre within itself.
Yeah, and honestly, like most of the Johnny Toe movies I've seen are from the 90s and the early aughts. I never saw Election. I never saw a lot of his later stuff. So I couldn't necessarily speak to how this relates to those. But I do think that this is a really good balance between the more straightforward action crime stuff that he did earlier than this, like The Mission, and the sort of out there super quirky comedies like Throwdown that he did later. Throwdown is one of my favorite movies of all time as well, I should say.
Have you seen Heroic Trio?
I have seen Heroic Trio. You like superhero things more than me.
It's true. I also love those three actresses.
I think Heroic Trio is awesome. I had a really good time. I saw it on the big screen, and it was a grand time. It does not speak to me the way some of his other movies do.
I think a lot of that is Michelle Yeoh, Anita Mui, and Maggie Chung speak to me in a way a lot of other people do. And so does Anthony Wong. I think he eats fingers in that movie, his own fingers. Well, this lined up well because my next one is another kind of grimy crime movie, but of a different variety. The Night Comes for Us, 2018, directed by Timo, and I'm going to probably say this wrong, but Chayanto. I believe it's how you say his last name, Timo Chayanto. This is, maybe I was wrong picking this because I got everybody else's recordings and Luana also picks this, and she goes into much more detail than I'm going to, so I'm just going to sort of give my point of view on this, and I think I'll put hers. You probably just heard it before Patrick started talking there. So I love John Wick movies. I, in fact, am probably the only person I know who thinks the John Wick movies got better with each movie, despite getting bigger and longer and more ridiculous. I enjoyed myself even more every time. I also love the Raid movies, and I really like the Raid sequel. I still think the best action movie of the last 25 years is The Night Comes for Us. It's just so relentless, so violent, so perfectly paced, so full of jaw-dropping shit. And the plot has plenty going on. It's not like it's plotless, but like a lot of Indonesian action films from this era, the narrative is often a way of setting up more characters to fight each other with more wild gimmicks and more locations and cool places for them. It's almost like a video game logic to it, where you have to get to the next guy, is sort of the way it works. Since Luana picked it, I'm not going to dig in too much. But my final thought is basically the way the world has gone since I've seen this movie is I can't believe it's on Netflix, by the way, but I can't believe every major studio with an action movie, a modest budget to big budget action movie on tap, didn't go to Chanyato to direct. Almost every Marvel movie would have been better with him behind the camera. Why would you reboot He-Man and not hire him? Why would you reboot Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat and not hire him? Why would you make Naked Gun without this guy? Is basically the way that's the way I'm treating this movie, is that it changed the way I just feel like nobody is living up to it since.
That's a hell of an endorsement. I have not seen this film.
It's so violent. It's so violent. I mean, horror movie fans would love this. He made good horror movies too. So yeah, if you haven't seen him, look into him. His stuff's on Shudder and Netflix. Merry Christmas. Happy post Hanukkah. It's been it's post solstice, and I believe it is Kwanzaa Eve. This is Gabe, and I'm with Tyler Foster, who you may remember from the how many did we do? We did the when animation meets live action was a pretty recent one we did. We did the Legacy. Yeah, Legacy Sequels was a good one. And then we had a follow-up with Twin Peaks. So yeah, this is Tyler, and this is Tyler's list. I'm helping him record this one, so it's going to sound a little different than some of the other ones. Hello, Tyler.
Hello. So I just, this is just the first 10 movies that, off the top of my head, from 21st century that I think are underrated. I don't know how much of a fixed definition of underrated we have, but
yeah, I want it to be whatever you think is underrated. If you don't think people are talking about it enough, if you don't think people are talking about The Force Awakens enough, more power to you.
Okay, fair enough. So let's see. These are just in alphabetical order. I didn't put them in. I didn't rank them in any way. The first one that is on my list is Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. I really think that this could have been like a big, like a pretty, maybe not not like a blockbuster necessarily, but I feel like this would have been a solid comedy hit if it had actually been able to come out in theaters. But it it was scheduled for 2020, and then it got booted to 2021, I think, because of the pandemic, and it
Right.
ultimately just sort of dropped on digital. But I really think this is one of the funniest comedies of the 21st century. I think it's you know, I enjoy Bridesmaids. I think that's a fine movie.
Yeah.
But as far as the collaborations, the two collaborations between Kristen Wiig and Annie Momola go, I think Barb and Star is much more my specific vibe, and it's just a very absurd, funny movie. And I hope more people can see it.
I haven't seen it, but it seems like, from what I know, it seems like something that like the next generation will pick up on.
Mhm.
Seems like one of those to me.
It's definitely a very unique and strange movie that has like musical numbers, and it's very colorful, and Kristen Wiig plays two roles in it, and it's just really delightfully absurd. And also, just as a side note, RIP to the production company that Adam McKay and Will Ferrell used to have together, because they don't get along anymore for whatever reason. So I think
Mm.
this is probably one of the last comedies that they produced together that still had their names on it. So, but yeah, Barb and Star, definitely a delight if you're ever looking for something extremely silly and lighthearted. Then I highly recommend it. Another movie. This one's definitely more traditionally underrated. I don't know how many people even know that it exists, but it's a movie called Brigsby Bear. This is a movie starring Kyle Mooney, who had a little bit of SNL like fame. He sort of orbited in that arena. He more recently did a movie called Y2K, which I haven't seen yet. But Brigsby Bear has stuff in common with another movie that's on my list. But I think Brigsby Bear and this other movie, which I'll get to in a minute, they're really great and beautiful movies about like why do people make art. And I think that that's just like a really, you know, in addition to it being very funny, because it's another funny comedy, it's got a great pedigree. It's like a co-production between The Lonely Island and Lord and Miller. That alone is a great like like caliber of modern comedy people working together.
Mhm.
And then Kyle Mooney is sort of his own brand of comedy, and yeah, it's this. Very strange movie about a guy who learns as an like a adult that he was kidnapped when he was an infant, and the parent people he thought was his parents were not his parents. And it sounds like it's going to be sort of heavy, but the movie is actually very sweet. It's another movie that's fairly warm-hearted and positive, and I think there are a lot of comedies that are sort of, not that I have a problem with that, because I think of like people like Tim Robinson, who are doing comedy that sort of has a dark edge to it, and is sort of
Mhm.
manic. But I like Brigsby Bear and Barb and Star because they're sort of lighthearted. Because Barb and Star was a replacement for something else on my list, I'm already going out of order in terms of alphabetical. I'm going to jump back. Probably the closest, I think, on my list, if I'm looking at it. Yeah, I would say the closest on my list to a movie that is not obscure, but is still comparatively obscure, would be Blind Spotting. That's a movie that I
Mhm.
really championed when it came out in 2018. I would say that that's probably the least obscure because it was successful enough that they made it into a television show, which is also great. I really wish the television show had been able to go for just one more season, because it would have made a great circular sort of arc with the movie. But it was part of a like trio of movies in 2018 that were about the Bay Area in California. The other ones being the more buzzy and popular, like Black Panther was obviously like a global
Mhm.
phenomenon, and Ryan Coogler's from Oakland, and the movie opens in Oakland and stuff. And then there was Sorry to Bother You by Boots Riley, which was also very buzzy and it's more outrageous, and so I think that got a lot of press. And then Boots Riley has his own like following already. But then Blind Spotting is this great movie by David Diggs and Rafael Casal, and they're like lifelong friends who grew up in the Bay Area. They wrote the movie together, and yeah, and they play the main characters, and it's just a great movie about like race and contemporary gentrification and culture and stuff. And I think one of the things that I really like about it is, even though it is like a serious and dramatic movie, um, I also find it very funny. I think in that regard, it really does feel like, I don't want to overpraise it because this is obviously one of the greatest movies ever made, but it does remind me of Do the Right Thing in that sense, that they're both movies that are heavy, but they're also really funny, and they're about a community, and they're about the people who live in that community, and the movie really captures that energy of the people who live there and stuff. So it's a definitely a movie that has a message, but I also think that it's funny and lively and really well made.
I should say Tyler stayed with me one time and he made me watch this movie. And another movie it reminds me of is it's a much more bright version of Mean Streets. I think that the friendship between the characters always reminds me of the friendship in Mean Streets.
Yeah, and like I said, I really liked the TV show. There's one episode of the TV show that might be one of my favorite episodes of TV ever, and it's just a really wonderful, unexpected episode that has one of the guys from the Raid in it, and in a completely different kind of role, and it's really sweet and charming. Like this guy from the Raid, I think his name is Joe Taslim, and he was in Fast 6 also. And in this episode of the show, he does do some of his kung fu, but he also sings and stuff. Like he gets out an electric piano and he sings a song, and it's just like
Nice.
really great, like blending of all sorts of different elements, and they all come together really well. And so the movie and the show are both great, and so that's definitely high on my list, even though that one's a little more high profile. The next one on my list, trying to get back in the right order, would be the Brothers Bloom. On this press tour for Wake Up Dead Man, Rian Johnson's been talking a little bit about how the Brothers Bloom was one of the a movie that he really thought, like, he was disappointed by the reception, but he's really like finds it heartwarming when people come up to him and talk to him about the movie, that they saw it and they are passionate about it. And I do think the Brothers Bloom is really great. It has one thing you'll see in a lot of his movies is there are a lot of little tributes to Ricky Jay, the magician / actor.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when he made Knives Out, there was a role that was going to be played by Ricky Jay, but Ricky Jay passed away before the movie was made, so he was played by M. Emmett Walsh instead. There's a Ricky Jay poster in the new Wake Up Dead Man, but he narrates the Brothers Bloom. He has this great poetic, like Dr. Seussian kind of narration, and it's just a really great twist on the kind of, because Rian Johnson makes these very intricate sort of, I mean, obviously the mysteries, they have a lot of moving parts and stuff, and I feel like the Brothers Bloom is a little bit different because it's more of an adventure, but it still has that moving part chess piece kind of feel to it, and it's really good. I think Mark Ruffalo is great in it. It has Rinko Kikuchi, who is in Babel, and she's great too. And Rachel
Best thing about Babel, as someone who hates the movie Babel but loves her role in it,
I don't remember much about Babel, but I do remember her being great in it. And then of course, Brothers Bloom is an essential piece of Rian Johnson's history, in the sense that it's got Rachel Weisz in one of her greatest roles, and then Rachel Weisz would go on to be married to Daniel Craig, and then I don't know for sure, but I imagine that was part of how he got in touch with Daniel Craig to be in the Knives Out movie. An important piece of his history, and a great movie that I think more people should see. The other movie that it relates to Brigsby Bear. It's another great movie about why do people make art and what is important about art and how does it affect our lives, would be this Japanese movie called Fish Story. This was back in the era when I wrote for DVD Talk. It came out because it's from 2009, and in that period when I wrote for DVD Talk, to select the movies that you're going to review was just a web page that just had all these titles listed on it, and some of them would go red the longer they sat in there, but you're supposed to take a certain number of red titles, a certain number of like titles that aren't past due, basically. So I would just take whatever happened to catch my fancy at a glance. So I picked this movie back then, and It's such a unique movie. It's kind of like a little bit like a fever dream. I don't remember why. I mean, I guess I must have just thought, even though I really liked it, I guess I remember that it was not the greatest DVD. Like the subtitles were burned into the picture and stuff, and I might have been non-anamorphic. So for whatever reason, I got rid of the DVD, and then it wasn't long before I regretted that because then it was hard to find for a long time. But a couple of years ago, I discovered that the company Third Window Films had put it out on Blu-ray in the UK, and even better, the disc is region-free. So if you're in America, you don't have a region-free player, you can still order this disc and it'll play. And it's this great movie about a Japanese punk band that records this single, and the single has, for reasons that are explained in the film later, it's got a little gap in the recording where it's just silent. And because there's this strange silent period in the song becomes sort of famous. And the movie takes place over multiple different time periods. There's one where there's an asteroid heading to Earth, and there's one where there's a hijacking on a boat, and there's the story of the band that recorded the song, and it all ties together in this really beautiful way. And I just think it's a great little hidden gem, and it's one of those movies that I just try to get anybody to watch. My one fun little trivia about the Fish Story is that in all the time that I've been like championing Fish Story, I haven't gotten that many people to watch it, but one of the people who did watch it was my friend Emma Tolkien. And she went home, like after she watched it and she thought it was great, she went and showed it to her dad. And I wasn't even thinking about this when I sent it to her, because I was just trying to get people to watch the movie. I don't care who it is. I would like anybody to watch the movie because it's a wonderful little movie. But her dad is Michael Tolkien, and Michael Tolkien is one of the writers of Deep Impact. And this is a movie that has an asteroid crashing to Earth. And so I thought that was sort of, and he apparently liked the movie too. So I was like, I would have been more nervous if I had realized that I was indirectly recommending another asteroid movie, especially an asteroid movie which happens to reference Armageddon instead of Deep Impact. But
Yeah, that's funny.
Great movie. The next one is probably, let's see. Yeah, I would say that of the movies that I put on this list, this would be the one that is the hardest sell for people. I do understand why people don't like her, but this is a movie by Miranda July, very acquired taste, and this is probably the movie of she only got 3 movies, but of those 3 movies, this is probably the one that's the most acquired taste, which is The Future from 2011. So I saw this movie in 2011 at the Seattle International Film Festival, and I just I didn't dislike it, but I didn't really know what to make of it. And so in 2011, what was I in 2011? I was like 26 or something like that. 26. I didn't see it again until 2020 because I was going back in a time when I was more financially secure and the world was an easier place to travel in. I made plans to go to my first ever Sundance Film Festival because I like Miranda July as a filmmaker, and she had a new film, Kajillionaire, playing at the festival. And I thought, if I'm ever going to go to Sundance, I might as well go for this filmmaker who doesn't make a lot of movies, and I really want to see this movie. And I thought I better rewatch The Future, and I rewatched it, and it was like 180 degrees from my first viewing, because the movie is a movie that is for people who are in their mid-30s, and they're thinking about they've reached that point in their lives where it's like, whatever happens next is going to be the rest of my life. And it's so well captured in this movie through so many little things. Like there's a scene where this character played by Hamish Linklater, he goes to this old guy's house. He's decided to quit his job and become someone who tries to do good things for the environment. So he's going around trying to get people to basically pay for these trees that they're going to plant on this person's behalf. And so he knocks on this guy's door, and there's this old guy inside. And this old guy's talking about time, basically. He's showing the guy off all of his Christmas cards that have like little lewd limericks to his wife. And this was a real guy, too. Part of what she did when she was making this movie was she would get the free penny saver, and she would look through it in the classifieds to people who were offering stuff to buy. And then she would go to those places, she would buy the thing, and then she would just talk to them about, like, do you sell stuff in the penny saver all the time? And what is it like and what do you get out of it and that kind of thing. And she wrote a whole book about it, and it's a good book. But this guy was real, and she put him in the movie. So he's showing off these real Christmas cards. And ultimately, I think the message of the scene is like, you're just at the very beginning of the beginning. Like there's so much more that's going to happen to you in the rest of your life, and over the next however many decades that you're going to be alive and together. And there's just this little detail where he's like touching, like the guy, he's sitting on the guy's couch, and the guy's couch has a certain like feel to it, the fabric. And then he goes home, and his couch has the same fabric, and he's looking around his apartment, and he's seeing similar indications of like what is like how this apartment could be like something that they live in for a long time. And he's basically seeing forward into the future because of this similarity between his place and the other guy's place, and just little things like that. It's just a really strange movie and a unique movie. And I think that a lot of people get hung up on the main part of the movie is that there's this cat. It's like they're going to adopt it, and the idea is they get it in their heads that, well, the cat has a lot of responsibility. The cat's going to be alive for a decade and whatever. And, you know, once we have this cat, like all of our priorities are going to change because we have something to take care of. We have a responsibility. And so, and the cat is like a character in the movie. The cat has a voice, an internal monologue performed by Miranda July. And it's definitely, I can see why people would find it a little twee. I do think the movie's great, and it's just, it really says a lot metaphorically about what it's like to think about the future. And I just think, yeah, great, underrated movie. And I know that there's sort of a barrier for entry for some people, but I think it's worth it. The next movie on my list is an independent movie called Other People. It's a movie about, of all the movies on my list, this is absolutely the heaviest of them. It's based on it's a semi-autobiographical story. This guy named Chris Kelly. Chris Kelly, he wrote an episode of Broad City, and then he would later go on to co-create the show.
To The Other Two?
Yeah, The Other Two. Like that was a big comedy show, and people really liked that show. So he wrote it about himself. So the movie's about this comedy writer who's come back home. Comedy writer is played by Jesse Plemons. He's come back home because his mom has been diagnosed with cancer. His mom's played by Molly Shannon. And so, and he has a great relationship with his mom and a not so great relationship with his dad, who's played by Bradley Whitford. And yeah, and it is a heavy movie because it's obviously about her dying of cancer. It's a autobiographical story, and she does pass away. So no illusions about what happens in the movie. It's definitely, if that's a thing that you're going to be sensitive to, I would definitely add that caveat before watching. But it is also very funny, and it's just got a great message about how we, like, what do we take from there's this part in the movie where it's like he's hanging out with his friend. His friend's played by John Early. He's a very hip comedian. He was in Search Party and stuff like that. And he's talking about like his own mother passed away, but she talked about like oak trees. And now he's like, whenever I see an oak tree, I think of my mother. The way the movie weaves that sentiment into the story, I think is just very beautiful and very funny. If you watch this movie, you'll never think about trains, Drops of Jupiter the same way ever again. The next movie on my list, this is probably the most personally involved, or in terms of the story about how I got there, or I ended up seeing this movie. The story definitely relates just to me, which is way back in 2008. Yeah, I found out about this Malaysian movie that was a comedy and a musical. And I found out about it on Facebook. So I followed the Facebook page, and I was like, well, when it's done playing festivals, eventually I'll be able to see it. And years passed. I still sometimes saw occasional updates on the Facebook page, or I thought about the movie. Nothing. And it wasn't until 2022. So there was Vinegar Syndrome, the home video label. They have these Black Friday sales. And so they put up it was either Black Friday or another sale near the end of the year. And I just picked out a bunch of stuff to buy. I wasn't, I would read the synopsis really quick and say, does that sound like it could be interesting? And I whittled down my list. I bought a bunch of stuff, and when my order showed up, one of the movies in there was this movie Sellout, and it wasn't until I took the slipcover off and I looked at the actual cover of the on the Blu-ray, and I was like, oh, this is the movie that I wanted to see like 15 years ago. I had no idea that it had never come out. Apparently, there was this whole legal thing where they had to battle the producer, and I think the Blu-ray is the first time it's been available most places in the world. This is a very strange and unique musical that's in part about capitalism, and like it's a little bit meta, and like because it opens with there's a character in it who's a reporter, and she's just trying to become famous in whatever way will make her famous. So the movie opens and she's interviewing a filmmaker that has the same name as the filmmaker of the actual movie. So there's a little bit of like meta comedy in there, and it's about this guy who works for this mega corporation, and he invents a machine that can make multiple it can turn soybeans into like 8 different products, and he's just trying to get them to manufacture the machine, but they want him to build in a mechanism that it will break after a certain amount of time, like maybe the day after the warranty expires. And it's filled with music, and it's very funny and very strange, and you'll just never see anything like it. So even though it's an imperfect movie, it's probably a little too long, but I just think it's very bizarre and you'll never forget it. I mean, there's a whole musical number that is designed like one of those 90s karaoke videos where you even see the color spreading across the text on the screen, even so inviting the audience to sing the song instead of the characters in the movie. So it's just like a very funny, strange movie, and I really like it a lot.
That sounds a little bit like the Takashi Miike movie, Happiness of the Katakuris has a sequence sort of like that in one of
right.
them. That sounds good. This director's follow-up, In the Dark, also sounds kind of interesting.
Nice.
Look into that.
One that when we were discussing recording this, I know that you have seen this one. The next one on my list would be Shirkers. This is a documentary by a woman named Sandy Tan. It's a really great movie about how when she was a teenager, she was in a film class with a bunch of other friends, and she and her friends and the guy who ran this film class, they went out and they shot this independent movie that she wrote. And at the time, like if it had been released, it would have been a big deal because there was no independent film scene in, I think she's from Singapore. Yes, Singapore. That's what I thought. Yeah, so there was not a lot of independent filmmaking in Singapore, and they shot this whole movie, and then she handed over all the footage and stuff to the teacher of the film class, and he was going to go edit it, and he absconded with the footage and everything. And so this documentary, Shirkers, is several decades later. She goes and investigates like what happened to this guy, and who was he, and why was he, like what was his whole deal, and where did he go. And yeah, just a really great movie. It ended up on Netflix. I saw it at a local film festival, and I had no expectations. I was just like, I basically went off the log line and a single photograph, and I was just blown away by how cool and interesting it was. And yeah, just a really wonderful documentary, and very funny and spirited. Like one of the things that I think it captures so well is her own enthusiasm, and like in that way it definitely, even though the documentary doesn't necessarily talk about it explicitly, but it does really tell you a lot about the idea that Hollywood or filmmaking, these industries, they can be really rough on young women who could have made so many great things. Like you wonder what could have happened like with her career if the film had come out, even if it had been amateurish. Like, not to give too much away, but they do find the footage, but they don't find the sound. So unfortunately, the film is still sort of a lost dream, but the footage that's in the documentary, it all looks amazing. Like, it just looks really cool, like visually really striking and interesting. I mean, it is tempting to like build up the film just because you don't know what it is, and you can't you can't ever know what it is. So your imagination can run a little wild. But yeah, it's just she's really funny, and all of the interviews with her friends are funny, and it's just for a movie that is about something that is technically tragic, it is a very like lively and warm documentary.
And I was happy that Tyler picked this because I was trying to limit my own list, and this was on the cusp. So I'm happy it's on this podcast because it's a really fantastic movie, and it is easy to watch on Netflix. Unlike a lot of these other movies Tyler's talking about, which are not available anywhere.
Yeah, most of these are probably not available to stream. I think
A couple are on DVD or Blu-ray. Yeah.
I actually don't think. I think let's see. Blind Spotting, Barb and Star's got a 4K even. Blind
Yeah.
Spotting's got a Blu-ray and 4K digital. Brigsby Bear's on Blu-ray. Brothers Bloom is on Blu-ray. Fish Story is on Blu-ray. Future is only on DVD. Other People is only on DVD. Sellout is on Blu-ray. Shirkers is only on Netflix. So most of these are available on physical media at least, but you probably won't find most of them, some of them for streaming. The last movie on my list is a movie that you can watch on streaming as of, again, just recently. It was unavailable for a long time. It's a movie called Timer. A lot of people saw this because it was on Netflix for a long time. This is a movie by Jack Schaefer. She would go on to become a big part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. She worked on Captain Marvel, and more importantly, she was one of the main creative forces behind WandaVision. And then I believe she went on to work on Agatha All Along because it was related to WandaVision.
Yeah.
And so this was before all that. She made this independent movie. It's called Timer. It stars Emma Caulfield, who is from Buffy and who had a role in WandaVision. And it's about it's a sci-fi movie about a world in which you can get a little device implanted in your wrist that will display a countdown to when you're going to meet your soulmate. It will only work if your soulmate also has one implanted. If your soulmate doesn't have one, then yours will remain blank. Emma Caulfield plays this woman who is like, she has a timer, but it's blank, and so every time she gets serious with someone, she takes them to the timer store and has one implanted in her, or gets her partner to get one, and to see if both of their timers will light up. And unfortunately, it keeps not going that way. It's a funny movie. It's like a sort of a family because her sister is the main character in the movie, and she's really funny. Yeah, it's just a great, unique, cute little sci-fi rom-com that was unfairly, I think, overlooked because it was on DVD, but then it went out of print, and you still can't get it on physical media, but they have recently, finally, probably because of her prominence in the MCU, they worked out the ability to watch it on streaming, on digital, and stuff like that. So you can finally see it again. And that's another one that I have a unique personal story about, which is I like this movie. This is another movie that I got through DVD Talk. This one I hung on to, thankfully, because now it's impossible to find the DVD. At some point, I discovered that there was a French Blu-ray release of it, so I imported the French Blu-ray release, and when it showed up, I was shocked to discover that my own review was quoted on the front cover.
That's right. I remember. Yeah.
I don't think as far as I know, I mean, it did make me wonder, am I being quoted more constantly on foreign releases that I just never see, that I have no idea? Because they don't have to tell you when they quote your review. But yeah, It was not only written on the cover, but there was even a sticker on the plastic wrap that also had my quote on it. So that was sort of a surreal experience to discover that, my own review was pull quoted. But yeah,
Nice.
Timer's a great movie, and I'm glad that people are able to see it again because it was very frustrating that during the height of like WandaVision hype, that there was no way to get a hold of this movie that I thought was great. And
and Agatha All Along was even better. So, like, genuinely great stuff. Like, I was shocked how good Agatha All Along was. So
nice. So yeah, those are my 10 movies. And I could probably, if I had sat for longer, I probably could have come up with, 40 more. But those are the first ones that came to mind. I think a lot of these are movies that I have encouraged other people to watch. And because I love to recommend movies to other people.
he does. He's a bully about it.
I am. Movies are a social thing, so I have a tendency to, when a movie I like is available, then I'll end up watching it, 5 or 6 times, because I'll just go to each of my friend groups and I'll show them the movie.
Yeah, I've been afflicted by this.
Mm-hmm. That's why you live several states away, so I can't.
Right,
do all
right. All right. Well, thank you, Tyler. That was great.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything? Well, I guess I was going to say, is there anywhere they can reach you? But you're sometimes on my website.
Yes, when I am not lazy.
Okay. Well, Tyler will have some reviews up because I've sent him some stuff.
Yes,
and I'm sure they'll be.
I will actually do it.
They'll be great. The stuff I sent is interesting, and he always has good things to say, even when he has bad things to say.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
My next one is Computer Chess from 2013 by Andrew Laczkowski. I think this is probably, of the films on my list, this is the film that is the most beloved, in that I think this has a legitimate cult following, as opposed to some other movies on my list, which just they have their fans. But I think this is a movie that people talk about in hushed tones. If you are a certain kind of cinephile or whatever, I don't think it's enough. I think this movie is absolutely incredible. I think the fact that Andrew Laczkowski still struggles to get movies made when he's putting out stuff like this and support the girls is absolutely insane. Computer Chess is a shot on video film, because it is shot on, I got to look this up, because it is not just a sort of, consumer camcorder from the 90s. It is a very specific. Oh, it's not. Why wouldn't they mention it on the Wikipedia page? Analog video cameras is all they say. There's a specific Sony camera that it uses. It is a very strange look. It is an early analog video camera. It is in black and white. It is just so strange looking. That is really the number one thing. Go and look up the trailer on YouTube or something. This is also for free on Tubi if you want to, free with ads on Tubi if you want to just watch it. You should. It's amazing. But the look of these video cameras, they are both really low quality, but also look a little too hyper real in terms of motion. It's more than 24 frames per second. And these analog video cameras are used in a story about a chess tournament in the early 80s, and it's specifically a chess tournament where computer programmers pit their programs that have been taught to play chess against each other. And they're trying to figure out who can write the best chess program. And it's taking place in this very small hotel conference room. I forget exactly. I would imagine it's somewhere in Northern California. There's parts of this that have ties to Silicon Valley and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But it also kind of feels like everyone is flying out to be here. So it might literally just be in fucking Des Moines or something. It's a movie that mostly takes place in a really sad hotel and parking lots and adjacent places and stuff. And all of the performances, Andrew Laczkowski, his background was in mumblecore. He made a lot of extremely low-budget improvised movies in Austin before making this. I think of those filmmakers like the Duplass brothers and the other guy who did Hannah Takes the Stairs, the Chicago guy who I don't like. What was this guy's name? Joe Swanberg. I think compared to so many other people who are tied to mumblecore, I think just Andrew Laczkowski is clearly the best of them. Funny Ha Ha is, if not the first mumblecore movie, it's a very early influential one, and it's probably still the best. This movie is not mumblecore. It is not improvised. It's not, it has these genre tropes. It has these sci-fi elements. There's a scene that is okay, this is a sci-fi horror movie out of William Gibson or something, but the rest of the movie is, about this young programmer who is trying to figure out where he stands. And all the performance in this movie, everyone, they're all on the spectrum in very specific, well-observed ways. That's really the thing, is there are 15 characters this follows. It's kind of structured like a Linklater movie or something, where there's just like a sprawling cast of people who all have their own little weird stories as they come together for this tournament. Every one of them is a dork, but they are all a hyper-specific kind of dork that you, as someone who is listening to a film podcast, probably have spent time in these spaces. Like, you will recognize all these people. You went to school with these people. These people have been in your Discords. Like, as a sort of just anthropological study of dorks, it is an absolutely incredible achievement. But it also is so stylistically interesting. It's so funny. The writing is so sharp and weird, and it has all these like really weird discursive humors, like humorous moments. And then there's like a section where they go to one of the programmers' mom's house because they owe someone a lot of money for drugs, and then like that part is shot in 16 millimeter film and color, so all of a sudden you get like this totally different look. There's a lot of moves like that where it is actively fucking with the medium. It has an ending that is like kind of reality breaking. So in some ways it feels like if you were to watch a PBS documentary about a computer chess tournament in the early 80s, you might see footage like this. So in some ways the feel of this is documentary, because the performances are so naturalistic, and because they're using vintage equipment to shoot it, and because just all the period details are so perfect. But then in other ways, it is like so ambitious and weird and actively trying to break its genre and doing, you know, weird things with dissolves and playing with the language of film. And it becomes this like, yeah, I mean, there's like, it's open and like, it's just fascinating. It's on its own. You don't have to read subtext into it, but that it's also coming in like 2013 in this era where, you know, independent film is about to die. It's about to just sort of get consumed into A24 and just sort of become like the A24 content tube is sort of like what the vibrant world of independent cinema
a lot of that
is
stuff
going to
went
become.
to streaming too.
Yeah, and like streaming is about to kill everything in 2013. You're seeing like all of these people, you know, there's a chess master who's sort of running this tournament, and he has never been beaten by a computer yet because it's only 1981 or whatever. And so you're seeing this thing where, well, eventually all human, like the question of who's better at chess, computers or humans, you know, very quickly in the world of this movie is going to be a moot point. And it's just like, well, no, there's no conference of 40 human beings could beat the simplest computer on chess if you just turn the dial all the way up. That's just how chess works or whatever. And so there's this like anxiety about technology. Fascinating film. You could just look at it from every possible angle and see something new and interesting in it. And again, this is a movie with a cult following. The Chicago Film Society, they commissioned with some of their like grant money a 35 millimeter print of this. So there's like a 35 millimeter print of this shot on early 80s analog video film floating around, which adds another bizarre sort of layer of interpretation to it. So like, this is a movie that people have dedicated themselves to and talk about. But I think it's just like, I don't know, like if you think of what are all the big hitters for like, what are the best films of the 21st century, all your There Will Be Bloods and that sort of stuff. And it's just like, no, this is better. This is better than There Will Be Blood. Like, no question. There Will Be Blood is not half as good as computer chess. And computer chess should be talked about the way that, like, Breathless is talked about. Like, computer chess should be talked about as just, like, this is one of the foundations of all of cinema. And instead, it is a cult movie. That is how I feel about it. So that's why I would call it one of the most underrated.
I've seen it once, and because Patrick made me, because this is maybe the most Patrick movie in my brain when I think of Patrick movie. So I'm glad he picked it. But I think of this as sort of like a Christopher Guest movie that's made sort of a horror movie by its media. Like, it's not a horror movie, but it's something about the way it looks is really unnerving in a good way.
Yes. Yeah, no, there's definitely that Christopher Guest element. There's you would not need to change the story very much to turn it into a Best in Show style movie. But the tone, and again, yeah, that visual presentation, so like just takes it into such a different, fascinating direction.
So my next one is another one that I'm not sure, I might be misreading how well received it was, but The Nightingale from 2018 by Jennifer Kent. I'm going to try to run this one down since I don't think a lot of people have seen it. This film takes place in the 1820s when Australia was still a dumping ground for criminals from the United Kingdom. The plot is basically a revenge western in the vein of Hanny Calder, but with a lot more in its mind than Thrills and Sexy Ponchos, which is a jest I make because Hanny Calder is one of my favorite films. This follows a young Irish convict played by Aisling Francoisi, I think is how you say her name, Francoisi.
Please welcome Ashlyn Franchosi.
She's hunting down a British lieutenant who had raped her and murdered her family, and she teams up with an Aboriginal Australian man who also has reason to reap vengeance on the English. There was a very potent theme here of these two people, this Irish woman and this indigenous black man, who have been dehumanized based on their race, their culture, their class, their gender, in a country that has been colonized to the point where it is basically an outdoor prison. This Australian colonization is a very rich subject. I think some of the most celebrated and internationally popular Australian movies are about that exact subject. Even ones like horror movies that we talk about, exploitation movies, are secretly about Australian colonization. But the fact that this movie was sort of just dumped on Hulu in the States makes me think that not a lot of people have seen it. This was Kent's follow-up to The Babadook, and as of yet is her only other feature-length film. And it worries me that this wasn't a hit, and that's why she hasn't made anything else. I hope it's just because she has something really ambitious in mind. So my reasoning for why I think this is underrated is like a 3 or maybe 2.5 point list here. I'm going to make it 3 though. Number 1 has very, very little in common with The Babadook, and I think people were expecting another spooky, super allegorical little horror film. And number 2, The Babadook is ultimately kind of tame. It's rated R, but I'm pretty sure you could convince someone it was PG-13. There's not a lot of gore in that movie, and a lot of the scares are very PG-13 scares. I'm making it clear I'm not saying bad things about The Babadook, which if enough people had seen it, I would definitely include on this list, but The Babadook is The Babadook, so everybody knows it. The Nightingale is really brutal. Hard to watch level brutal. It's somewhere between 1/2 and 1/3 rape revenge story, and that's set against this sort of costume drama. So these are things that don't usually get put together. I think the only other rape revenge costume drama other than Ingmar Bergman's Virgin Spring, which is sort of the rape revenge movie that led to all other rape revenge movies, for better or worse, usually worse. And it's not allegorical because Kent is portraying these sort of dark truths behind what the 19th century was like in Australia. It's not being obfuscated by allegory. And that brings me to reason number 3. I don't think anyone else outside of Australia knew how to sell this film. You can say it's from the writer-director of The Babadook, and there are going to be some Babadook fans that are angry that they just sat through a 2+ hour long bleak and violent drama. So I feel like all these things got in its way. It was apparently a bit of a flop. It was a $2 million movie and lost money on just being $2 million Australian movie, so that's even less. But it did win Best Film, Best Direction, Best Screenplay, Best Actress, and Best Supporting Actor at the 9th Annual Australian Academy Awards. So people in Australia know about it. It got its flowers. Maybe it has a following there. But again, it just sort of got dumped on Hulu here in America.
Yeah, I have not seen it. Probably for all the reasons. I was just sort of like, oh yeah, no, this seems unbelievably bleak and long and upsetting.
Yeah, I
have not seen it yet.
I hadn't had the guts to watch it a second time, I'll admit.
Hi everyone, this is Barry Linn, Patrick Ripoll's co-host from 96 Greers. Very happy to bring you my top 5 movies that I consider the most underrated movies of the first quarter of this century. And these are in chronological order, not necessarily order in which I care about these movies. First is Death to Smoochie, which is a Danny DeVito directed movie from 2002. Is it a masterpiece? No, but Danny DeVito's loopy satire of children's television and the organized crime syndicates lurking off camera deserves cult status. The colorful setting and weird energy makes it a great midnight movie. Rainbow Randolph might be my favorite Robin Williams performance. Next, I have Maggots and Men by director Carrie Cronenwet from 2009. This is the least popular aughts movie on Letterboxd that I've rated 4.5 stars or higher. I believe I gave this one all 5 stars. I'm not surprised that almost nobody knows about a silent movie slightly under feature length with an all-transgender cast that tells the true story of a naval rebellion in the early days of the Soviet Union. However, it is 2026, and a queer sequel to Battleship Potemkin is the morale booster that we need. Hurrah for anarchy. Next, I have Duke of Burgundy, 2014 movie directed by Peter Strickland. I must confess that I am complicit in Duke of Burgundy's underrated status because it's hard to describe it to someone without making it sound like porn. It isn't porn, but it is a 70s Euro horror pastiche about 2 women whose dom-sub relationship is starting to fray at the edges. It's one of my favorite movies, sure, but more than that, seeing Duke of Burgundy on the big screen is one of my favorite experiences. The last time I was able to do so was a screening hosted by a local BDSM social group, and I promise this movie isn't porn. And in the audience talkback after, there was lively debate over who the audience sympathized with more, Cynthia or Evelyn. I love that this movie is able to have such a specific and well-observed relationship dynamic at its core and also include an extended homage to Stan Brakhage. Next, I have I Am Not a Witch, a 2017 movie directed by Rungano Nioni. If you're a film dork with a crush on Yorgos Lanthimos, you better not sleep on Rungano Nioni. Using humor to explore the absurdity of unjust social conventions without dismissing the human cost is a difficult balance to strike, but she accomplishes it with the ruthlessness of an assassin. And finally, I have Adrienne and the Castle, 2024 documentary by Shannon Walsh. I used to write a blog about fat characters in cinema, and it's still up at pandabearshape.com. So I say with some expertise that larger bodies are almost always used as visual shorthand for undesirable qualities. This bittersweet documentary about a fairy tale romance that blossomed in small-town Illinois does not criticize or smirk at Adrienne for being a fat woman. Instead, Walsh faithfully depicts her husband Alan falling in love with her at first sight and their extraordinary partnership devoted to beauty. I have never seen another film like it. It's rentable on Apple Plus, and if nothing else, I think we all deserve a documentary that isn't designed to inspire fear or outrage.
Friends come in all sizes, that's a fact, it's true. All the colors of rainbow from mauve to blue. The names are different, the shoes don't match. Some like to toss while others to catch. One might say grass.
Hello, this is Kristine Fisher. As a somewhat frequent contributor to my partner Gabe's podcast, I'm going to submit my top 5 movies between the years 2000 and 2025 in chronological order. My first is 2000 Quills, directed by Philip Kaufman. It's where the Marquis de Sade is diagnosed with libertine dementia by the Napoleonic consulate in 1981, and where he's sent to an insane asylum and engages in an affair with a young woman named Madeleine Leclerc. I think it's underappreciated because although it received a lot of Oscar nominations, not that many people saw it. It had a limited art house release, and some viewers were just put off by its sexual themes and lecherous grossness. There were otherwise more wholesome, historically based movies at the time of Gladiator and The Patriot. Gabe, what did you think of The Quills?
I actually saw this on DVD, rented with some friends. My friend Laura.
Mm-hmm.
Every time the Marquis de Sade said something, she went, ew! That's my strongest memory of it.
Jeffrey Rush has a very gross voice sometimes.
Yeah, but he's doing the right thing. No, I really enjoyed this movie. I remember, I think maybe back in the year 2000, I would have considered it one of the most underrated movies. I've just seen so many movies since then.
Yes, that makes sense. My second movie is 2011, Life in a Day. It was directed by a lot of people, but produced by Ridley Scott, YouTube, and LG Electronics. Thousands of videos are submitted globally and edited together to portray the events of July 24th, 2010. I think it's underappreciated because it's seen as that YouTube movie, since it's only viewable there on their website. Most people see it as good, but not particularly cohesive. Do you have any strong memories of Life in a Day?
Just that you made me watch it several times. I remember Nathan.
This guy is fainting while his wife gives birth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the cops are shouting his name because he's
Nathan.
fainting. He's holding the camera while he faints. That's what makes it very funny.
And you see like a view of him with like his head between his legs because he fainted while filming his partner's birth. My next movie pick is 2011's Jiro Dreams of Sushi, directed by David Gelb. Jiro Ono owns the humble but world-famous Sukiyabashi Jiro restaurant, even into his advanced late elder years. His two sons, Yoshikazu and Takashi, are also sushi chefs and under rivalry-like pressure to take over their father's business when he retires. Surprisingly, he wouldn't retire until 2023, and just this past October, he turned 100 years old. I think it's underappreciated because it has on and off availability through Netflix. Then it had a DVD Blu-ray release through Magnolia, but it's still a really beloved documentary for aficionados of cooking, sushi, Japan, and other kinds of restrained parenting styles. What did you think of Jiro Dreams of Sushi?
I think that the thing here is that sometimes underrated, but it can be based on the person.
Yes.
And based on as many times as you've seen this movie, with just me in your presence, I don't know how many other times you've seen it, it has to be underrated because nobody else has possibly seen it as many times as Kristine, probably including the filmmakers. So I think it's a good choice.
I really like it. I really have a big place in my heart for Jiro Ono. And he's still alive, still
He's
kicking.
sort of taking back over, isn't he?
He said just after or before his birthday, where he turned 100, just this past October, he says, I'm thinking about getting back into it.
Yeah.
My next movie is 2008's Bronson, directed by Nicholas Winding Refn, a one-act, third-wall-breaking depiction of the imprisonment of Michael Peterson, a.k.a. Charles Bronson, as depicted by Tom Hardy. I think it's underappreciated because some people might be put off by Bronson's use of violence and the early movies of Winding Refn, anything before Drive. And I think the movies before Drive don't get a lot of love. What did you think of 2008's Bronson?
I think it's Refn's best movie.
You think
and
so?
I think it's probably also Hardy's best movie. It's a great movie. I don't know how underrated it is. I'm not sure on the feeling on it these days.
You don't think people like Drive more, or they don't
I
like...
think everybody... Yeah, I think Drive is much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it might have been forgotten. And I think that the earlier ones, the Pusher movies, which it's better than the Pusher movies. So
yeah, that's true. My next and final film of the 5 is 2019's Dr. Sleep, directed by Mike Flanagan, a film adaptation of the 2023 Stephen King novel of the same name, which is itself a sequel to The Shining and carries on the story of Danny Torrance as an adult. I think it's underappreciated because it was released the week after Halloween in 2019. Viewers and critics are torn as to if it's meant to follow The Shining book or the movie, be a tribute to either or both, or it's meant to be readapted or work as a standalone sequel. What did you think of Dr. Sleep?
I liked it. We haven't seen the extended version of it. This is something I thought that Jim was going to pick, but I've gotten all the lists out of us recording now, and he did not pick it. So I would have not called it underrated the past 5 years or before, but I think it's now sort of been overlooked by a bunch of other Stephen King adaptations and a bunch of other Mike Flanagan movies.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see that. I agree.
I have 2 nearly made the list movies. Both of them, obviously, you know me, they're going to be documentaries. 2009's Last Train Home, directed by Li Shen-fan, a documentary that takes place in China over a series of 2 Christmas breaks when urban Chinese train stations are packed with people wanting to catch a train home to their hometown villages. Among these people are the Zhangs, a family of 4 where the eldest daughter, Qin, struggles between the pull of working in a big industrial factory and make your own choices, to living in a small village with their grandma under the scrutiny of her parents, who are themselves working in big industrial factories. I think it's underappreciated because it's hard to find on streaming, but it's Canadian and was a darling of the 2010 Sundance Film Festival. Do you remember Last Train Home at all?
Great movie.
Yeah? You think so?
Yep.
Yeah. My second and last nearly made the list is 2008's Dear Zachary, a letter to his son about his father, directed by Kurt Keane, a documentary that the mere mention of it or its plot makes me tear up. This garnered at least 4 chest-heaving sobs the first time I saw it. I think it's underappreciated because more people should see it, despite its emotional and heart-wrenching story. I didn't include this in my top 5 because of it being on the top of many critic sites' best documentary lists and leading to a Canadian law protecting children's safety during bail hearings and custody disputes. Do you have any strong memories of Dear Zachary, Gabe?
Yeah, I remember watching it on my own, and then I remember coming home and realizing you were watching it and saying, "Are you sure you want to watch this?"
And I answered, yeah. And I kind of carefully asked you about spoilers, and you didn't tell me too much.
No, I don't know if I can recommend people watch it. It's rough.
If you have like a bland day where you want to feel something, watch Dear Zachary. Okay. That's my list, Gabe. I love you so much.
Love you too.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The last movie I'm going to be talking about is Widows from 2018 by Steve McQueen. I think it's undisputable that like people discount genre films and they just don't think they think of genre films as a different category and a lesser category. And I think that people can overcome that prejudice if a movie is old and, you know, goes on to be influential. Like, I don't think you're going to find a lot of cinephiles who will like get mad if you say that Die Hard's one of the best movies ever or Jaws is one of the best movies ever. They'll be able to say like, yeah, Die Hard and Jaws are two of the best movies ever. Mm-hmm. They're just, you know, absolutely. And it's not because they are, you know, secretly smuggled in art films about difficult, challenging topics or whatever. It's like, no, they are just so fucking excellent at what they do that they are two of the greatest movies of all time. And Widows is not one of the greatest movies of all time. However, it is just an absolutely excellent genre film from a director who's known for art house stuff. And then I think people judge it based on how good of an art house film it was. And I think, unfortunately, it has just enough little bits here and there where people think that what it is an issues movie about, like, you know, anti-black violence, like police violence, about segregation in Chicago, stuff like that. Like, I think people thought this is Steve McQueen trying to take on the question of like the modern city and how, you know, racism affects how the modern city is run. And they were judging that this film on those grounds. And I would say that this film on those grounds is all right. It isn't bad. It doesn't get a lot wrong. It doesn't necessarily have the most deep, fine point, you know, surprising, evocative ways of exploring these topics. But I think it does that fine. When you are talking about like, okay, well, what about like just a fucking heist movie? This is just one of the greatest heist movies, crime movies ever. It's so fucking good. Every character is awesome. Every single scene in this movie from start to finish has one idea or choice. Sometimes it's a Steve McQueen director idea. Sometimes I think, was it Gillian Flynn who wrote Gone Girl wrote Widows? Sometimes it's like a Gillian Flynn idea. Like she just writes a really interesting line of dialogue, or she just has a character make a choice that's interesting, or a scene plays out slightly different than it would have otherwise because of an element she introduces to it. Let's see. It's based. Okay. So, and then it's also based on a television drama from England from the 80s. So I know nothing about that. Couldn't tell you how much of it comes from that as well. But, I'm seeing here, Steve McQueen also co-wrote the screenplay. So Steve McQueen might get some credit for some of those screenplay ideas as well. But I have seen this movie like 6 times at this point. And every single time there's new details that I observe that are just so interesting and fun. I think Daniel Kaluuya is like just one of the scariest guys who's ever been in a crime film. I think he is so fucking good in this. I love Brian Tyree Henry in it. I love Colin Farrell in it. I especially love Viola Davis.
Elizabeth Debicki. This was the movie that made me discover her, basically.
I mean, I would say the same is true for me, but I don't think I've really noticed her in anything else. Mm-hmm. So this is just the movie she's in.
Okay. Fair enough.
But she is great in it. It is just like, I mean, and again, like, you know, this is my personal taste or whatever. No one is going to fucking follow me down this road. Widows is better than Heat. I heard people say like, oh yeah, Widows, that kind of just felt like it was supposed to be an HBO limited series, and then they had to cut it down into a 2.5 hour movie. And like, I think that this suffers way less from that feeling than Heat does. Like, obviously this movie doesn't exist without Heat. Like, it would be very ahistorical to say, like, you know, Heat's irrelevant because Widows is here. Because it's like, well, no, Heat exists and therefore Widows exists. But, like, I'm probably going to watch Widows more times before I die than I'm going to watch Heat. There's a lot about Heat that just doesn't fucking work. Like, there's whole stretches of Heat that rely on you to really care about the relationship between Ashley Judd and Val Kilmer, or the relationship between Robert De Niro and whatever her name is in Heat, that his romantic interest in that, and all of the romantic subplots in Heat fucking terrible, and like they're like legitimate drains on it. And there's just some parts of that movie that, you know, Heat's fucking great. It's really, really good. But like, I just think Widows is tighter. I think it's better. I think it has, I don't know. It's hard to judge but I'm just trying to emphasize how much I like this movie. And when it came out, everyone just sort of shrugged it off. No, it kind of failed at the box office. No, it made, looks, according to Wikipedia, I guess it made its money back,
yeah,
but
it did okay.
But, like, I think this movie was following up a bunch of Steve McQueen movies that were considered, like, quote-unquote great films by art house theater, you know, that sort of thing. Like, 12 Years a Slave was a, you know, shocking box office success at the time. I don't think 12 Years a Slave is that great of a movie, to be perfectly honest. But I know, like, Shame was sort of critically acclaimed at the time. You know, certainly Hunger is where I first heard of Steve McQueen. And Hunger was a much smaller audience for that kind of movie, but like Hunger sort of had a big hit. And then I think the reaction to Widows was just, yeah, it's just not up to that quality. And I really do think it's that thing where people walk into a movie deciding what kind of movie it is, and then they judge it based on that criteria. Like Darren Aronofsky made his very best movie this year, Caught Stealing, but it's just a fucking crime movie. It's just like an Elmore Leonard style, like, guy on the run from 15 different criminal organizations, has a MacGuffin kind of a movie. And it's awesome. It's so good, but it's not a art house Darren Aronofsky movie. And so people just sort of are like, oh yeah, that's the thing he tossed off before he makes his next real movie. And I think that this is a problem people have. I think people judge movies based on how it fit their expectations rather than actually look at what they are. And I think if what they are is like excellently executed achievements in genre tropes, then that is just dismissed as the best that can aspire to is very limited, with very few exceptions. Like I think people talk about Fury Road like it's one of the greatest movies ever made. And that is a movie that instantly was just sort of like, okay, yeah, that's a genre movie but like that's also part of a series. That's part of, you know, it's a different thing. That's more of a Skyfall situation.
It was a comeback.
Where it was a comeback, and it's also like we walked in knowing the kind of movie it was going to be, and it was better than any of that kind of movie had ever been, which I think is like kind of the Skyfall thing as well. And I think Widows, people walked in and said like, okay, what's the problem with blackness in America? And like, this is not going to be the movie to solve that for you. But it's fucking great. And I love Widows. So this is the last one on my list.
I haven't seen the Small Axe movies yet, but this is my favorite Steve McQueen too. And
Lover's Rock is incredible. I think you specifically would really like Lover's Rock. I haven't seen the other ones.
Okay. I'll both say something supporting your argument and something not supporting your argument. Something supporting your argument, I also like this more than Heat, but I'm not I have the same problems with Heat that you do. I've never been a huge fan of that movie. I obviously recognize that it's a very good, very important movie, but I also do think that Widows would have been better if it was longer. I don't necessarily think it needed to be like a HBO series, but I did come away wanting more when I watched it, which I think is kind of a good thing. I don't think that I came away wanting more, but not feeling like I didn't get enough, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that was maybe a feeling I had the first time I watched it, and now that I've seen it a million times and just instinctively know the whole shape of it, I don't have that feeling, but I do want more in that, like, I just want Steve McQueen to make 3 more movies like Widows.
Yeah. All right, well then my last one is my deepest cut here. This is Live from the Space Stage, a Halix story. This is from 2020. This is directed by Matthew Serrano. This was a crowd-funded documentary that premiered on YouTube. That right there doesn't sound great. As a lover of niche pop culture documentaries, I've sat through a lot of very bad crowd-funded films. But this one was hyped up by Kevin Perger of Defunct Land and Jenny Nicholson of Jenny Nicholson fame, big YouTube personalities when it comes to specifically theme parks, I guess. They both have producer credit on this, so I watched it on a whim because of them and because it was free on YouTube, and I really enjoyed it. Halix was a band created by a team at Disneyland to play a daily stage show at Tomorrowland. The idea was, hey, Star Wars was really popular. How can Disney profit from this? Which is kind of Disney's entire thing post-release of Star Wars A New Hope. They were just, how do we do this? How are we going to, this needs to be our money. Let's make the Black Hole. Nope, that sucked. No one liked that. Okay, what do we do? Let's put a band on stage at Tomorrowland. And so because this was 1981, someone said, what if we make the band Van Halen meets Kiss meets corporate rock, starring science fiction fantasy archetypes? And it didn't work out very well. The show only lasted a few months. But like all niche pop culture things, it has its fans. And so, like, you know, I love a great documentary, even if it's not very long, about a B movie that flopped. I like hearing about failed productions from the point of view for the people on the ground, you know, the actors, the performers. And because this was a stage show, the actors and the performers are the most important people in the story. And so not only is this like a niche pop culture subject, but it was something I never even knew existed before I watched the movie. And I want to reiterate that I am not interested. I don't know if I need to this is the first iteration or reiteration, but whatever. I'm not interested in theme parks. In reality, I didn't even like them as a child. We had friends in Anaheim when I was growing up, so we could go to Disneyland every summer. And my parents finally figured out I just wanted a fucking stuffed animal of Huey, Dewey, and Louie. I can't remember which one's the green one. I think Louie's the green one. I wanted the green one. And they're like, that's way cheaper than paying to go to Disneyland and have him not go on any rides. So I don't care about this stuff from a nostalgic standpoint. But because of YouTube channels like Defunct Land and Jenny Nicholson, I've discovered that there is this sort of interesting subculture. And I'm not talking about the Disney adult, which is something I think people like to talk about, like they're anthropologists discovering a weird cult of of like people that are sacrificing their children or something. Like that subject doesn't interest me as much. But there's this sort of nostalgia that these people have for this, and the way this process has worked and the way these things were, that I find really interesting, that is encapsulated here in this really entertaining, fun little movie that is on YouTube for free and was, you know, good time, good 90 minutes of my life. I think I've watched it twice now, which is unusual for me. I almost included Neon Demon, realized we had talked about that way back when we did the best horror movies of the 2010s. I maybe should have picked Only God Forgives, because I think I'm the only person who doesn't hate that movie. And then one that we suggested already in last month's podcast was there's a 30 for 30 episode called June 17th, 1994. That's just a sort of wide view of what was happening on television at this in sports at the same time that O.J. Simpson was running away from the law. I know that Patrick has talked about him liking that movie too. Then
love it.
And then I wanted to talk about In Fabric, and it broke my heart realizing that I'd already talked about In Fabric on the horror movie podcast. So the only other one I can think of people really want an underrated cult movie out of me, I think Knife Plus Heart might be underrated. That's like a sort of surrealistic neo-giallo slasher that takes place in and around the set of a gay porno. I like that movie a lot, but it's on Shudder, so maybe it's a hit by now, so I didn't pick that one. Did you have any almost made it, Patrick?
Yeah, I would say like Bamboozled by Spike Lee. That's in the Criterion Collection now, so I kind of decided not to go with that one, but that was I think the first Spike Lee movie I saw, and I just fucking still love it. Let's see, House of Mirth is a really good Terrence Davies movie with Gillian Anderson. Just like straight down the middle, like heartbreaking melodrama. Jerry, the Gus Van Sant movie. I think that is a pretty well-loved movie. I mean, I think it is divisive, but I think a lot of people think Jerry is really great, and I'm in that camp. Funny Ha Ha, that's a different Andrew Bujalski movie. I have Running on Karma and Throwdown by Johnny Toe. So those are two different Johnny Toe movies that I could have chosen. Calvaire, I think, is the very best of the French Extremity movies, and I think it's one of the ones that's talked about least. Dave Chappelle's Block Party is a movie that I owned on DVD, and I have probably seen 40 times. It is just like one of the great concert films, and it's a shame that Dave Chappelle's a piece of shit, but and Kanye West also at the beginning of first musical performance in that movie is Kanye West, but just like absolutely foundational. I was madly into Chappelle's show, and I had the exact same taste in rap as Dave Chappelle did. I was like really into backpacker shit. So nowadays I probably would not be as excited to see Talib Kweli rap, but but back then in 2006, I was all about it. Dave Chappelle's Block Party's awesome. Tristram Shandy by Michael Winterbottom is a really, really fun, like super meta Steve Coogan, Rob Brydon movie that sort of became the Trip movies that he made with them. Red Belt is another David Mamet movie I could have chosen. I had never heard anyone really talk about Red Belt after 2008 when it came out, but it is one of the better David Mamet movies. I had Bug Crush, which is a short film. I was like, short films probably shouldn't count. There's a reason people don't talk about those, and it's not necessarily the same reason as them being underrated. Paranoid Park by Gus Van Sant is a later, I feel like a lot of Gus Van Sant, you can sort of look at his career as like pre and post Good Will Hunting, and as soon as he started going down that Hollywood road, everything kind of fell apart. But I think Paranoid Park and Last Days are both really excellent movies. So those were some of the other stuff I had on my list.
All right, sounds good. And thanks to everybody who participated here and sent me a list or recorded a thing. Love you all. Patrick, can you tell the listeners where they can find you?
Yes, absolutely. I have a podcast called 96 Greers, where me and my co-host Barry are watching every feature film with Judy Greer in the cast. We are diving into what it means to be a character actress. We are diving into what it means to say yes to every role that comes your way in the 21st century. This is a podcast about the underrated films of the 21st century. Then 96 Greers is a podcast about the forgotten films of the 21st century, the kind of stuff that you may have passed over on streaming, if that. That's sort of Judy Greer's bread and butter, but also she's in big movies too. There's a lot of interesting stuff. 2025 was a hell of a year for her. She was in The Long Walk. She's the best part of that movie. Eric LaRue was released on VOD this year. She's the lead in that. That's a Michael Shannon directed movie she's great in. She's the villain in Dead of Winter. So never been a better time to get on board the Judy Greer fan bus. And I also am the co-host of Wizard Jail, a Visionaries Rewatch podcast with you, Gabe Powers. At some point, we're going to record that last episode.
Yeah. The holidays are a thing, man. So
yeah,
even if you don't really celebrate them, they're a thing.
But we've been having a good time over on Wizard Jail talking about this forgotten 80s cartoon and sort of just how unusual these kinds of children's fantasy things can be if you start to really pick apart what the implications of the world are. So yeah, I would say that's all I have to really promote right now.
All right, cool. You can find me at the Genre Grinder website. You can find me as Gabe Powers, one word, on both Blue Sky and Letterboxd. Thanks for listening. Hope everybody has a great 2026. Hope everybody has a great next 25 years of the century. I feel like 25 years is a wide enough range that there will be some improvements. And thank you for listening. And then thanks again to everybody else who contributed. And please visit Genre Grinder Cares. It is a link at the top of genregrinder.com where I'm selling shirts for charity that might help make the next 25 years a little bit better for some people. Okay, goodbye.